thank you all for joining us on our Hangout on Google Helpouts. I have with me Daniel Solis. Daniel Solis is a distinguished game designer, including card games, dice, and role-playing games, and he's participated in several successful Kickstarters, most recently for Belle of the Ball. He's also a freelance graphic designer and currently self-publishes his own games. His most recent release is the card game Light Rail. In addition, he blogs, he demos his games, and he also offers helpouts to interested students. So for people who don't know what a helpout is, it uses the Hangout platform for a closed teaching experience, and learners can book and pay for sessions in advance. I'll include a link with more information on the video. So just to get started, thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. And here's my first question. So you're really very busy professionally. Why also include helpouts in your business model?
Well, it was actually because I was so busy that I started offering these kind of consultation services. I get a lot of emails from people who are just kind of starting out in their careers as game designers or as graphic designers in the gaming business, and also just graphic design students in general. And unfortunately, I just couldn't devote the full real amount of time to answer those questions that I probably should. And so when Google Helpouts started becoming a thing, I saw that as a very easy way to kind of like say, all right, if you actually do want to talk about your portfolio or something, or you want me to look at a prototype that you've been developing and you want my input on it, we can talk for half an hour and it'll cost you about the cost of a pizza. And it'll be very simple, and it's only a little bit of my time that I have to devote to it, and it's finite. It's kind of structured. Whereas normally, if I was to just freely answer any of these questions at my own pace, I would spend way too much time on them. Honestly, I would want to spend just hours and hours trying to answer questions and stuff. And that's great when you have the time to do it, which I used to, but this is a nice middle ground where I don't feel like I'm charging like full consultation service fees, but I am also setting a small barrier to entry that kind of allows me to at least make a little bit of money and but also just give people the full attention that they really deserve.
Okay. When you consider a helpout as a teaching tool or part of professional learning, why use a helpout? I do also want to mention for people who haven't gone to check out your resume on your blog, you have been a professor as well too, so you do offer a teaching component. So, I mean, you've talked about helpout for mentorship, but what do you think it brings to it professionally?
As an educator?
Sure. Or even from the learner perspective, sure.
Okay. Well, it's funny because helpouts are usually short. Mine are only about 30 minutes. A lot of what I do is give reference materials. Like a lot of times there are simple questions and simple fixes that are easy to communicate with a shared screen or with looking over visuals. And that's way easier to do in a video conferencing format like Google Helpouts or even a Skype call than it is through email or exchanging PDFs and that kind of thing. It's just faster and more efficient, and in doing so, I get the experience of an in-person portfolio review or something close to it that you just can't get when I'm just answering emails in a text format, for example. And that's one of the main valuable things that in the visual field in graphic design that makes that's the most valuable thing when you're learning graphic design, is to have someone who has experience in the field looking over your portfolio and looking over your work and making little notes here and there, and getting real-time feedback. So that's the main thing that I like out of Google Helpouts.
I think the other part that I like about them too is sometimes people think they need a huge course, but what your helpout answers is, I just need 30 minutes. It's like a little bit to give me a boost. And I think like some of the stuff like Khan Academy is really sort of showing you just need just a help out, I guess, to make that point. Yeah, there's just a little bit of learning that someone needs.
Yeah, I do offer online video courses for more detailed, in-depth things. And if it becomes apparent that whoever I'm talking to on Google Helpouts needs something a little bit more deep, I can direct them to those offerings as well. But oftentimes, all they really need is just a half hour to talk to someone and use them as a sounding board.
Okay. And they can get those through your website, or do you offer them on another course platform like Udemy or?
They're actually on Skillshare,
Okay.
Skillshare.com, and the course that I offer there is very specifically tailored to people who want to learn how professionals in the tabletop gaming industry set up card decks. So if you ever have to design a deck of cards, most people start when they're just getting started in this kind of project. They'll design one card at a time, and it takes a long time. And so the course that I teach is a video course that goes through from the very basics to more detailed high-end tools, teaching how to set up an entire card deck with as automated a process as possible.
Okay. I just also want to mention too, dear professors who have talked to us about gamifying your courses, you now know how to find Daniel and his courses as well. So that's how you can reach out to him, just as a side note. I want to mention for people as well too that you actually included sort of a sample helpout that's available on your blog. And for me, when I watched your helpout with Jaren, there was clearly like you know you're an expert. Like when you look at your resume that's available on there, you have, I think it's 15 years of industry experience right now,
Yeah,
or
getting
even
getting
more.
close to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you have a lot of a depth of experience. But the other thing that really came through is you were like, I know what you're getting into. There was a part where you asked him about the deadline, and I think your response was, "Yo, dude," because you've been there. You know what the milestones are like. So what are your students expecting, and do you find it difficult to coach them when you're using the Helpout platform or via distance?
Um, I don't find it difficult, and to be honest, I don't get a lot. Sometimes I just don't find out what they do with my input. So that's one drawback of the format, I guess. That once a session is done, I don't necessarily get any. I don't have an opportunity to do follow through unless they do another session with me. But from what I've heard and what I've seen from projects that have followed up with me and said, "Hey, I took your advice and did this other thing," what I'm finding the most valuable input that I'm offering a lot of times is moderating expectations. I think a lot of people who are just engaging in their first project, whether it's games or some other thing, if they're really ambitious and it's their first project, they put a lot of their heart and soul into it, and sometimes that first project scales up way into like a level that is just way higher than should be the case for a project that's your first time out in something that's as like intense as producing a tabletop game. So a lot of times, what I advise is, it sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe it sounds weird, but like maybe try something a little bit smaller, devote a little bit less heart and soul into a smaller project first, because really that first project that you're starting off with is what you use to learn the craft of the thing. And once you've established those basic skills with a project that requires way less of your emotional investment, then you can go on to the way bigger project that is actually your masterpiece and the thing that you really love and are passionate about. And you'll be able to come to that project with the experience and the actual rote skills that you really need, and you're not just learning that as you do the more heartfelt project.
Yeah, you made a comment when I listened to your podcast on The Escapist, and you talked about the card, the game that you like of your own suspense, which is just 13 cards, which I thought was important to say. Like you can accomplish something that's just so small.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of micro games going on right now in the industry, and they're just tiny little decks of cards. And I think that's probably one of the best things that a beginning designer in games can work on, is how much game can you fit into as few components as possible, because that really restricts the scope of your project and gives you a nice bite of the apple to see if you really like the experience of designing games and not having to devote a lot of effort or budget into production.
okay, yeah. So what have you learned so far working with this platform, and what do you think other instructors should know when they're preparing for their first help out?
It helps, in my case, because of what I do, it helps to see some materials before the session, so you're not seeing things completely fresh when you first hit go. It helps to get some PDFs or JPEGs of whatever it is you're going to look at and discuss a little bit early on. You don't have to spend too much time on it early on because you're going to be talking about it later, but at least have one little eyeball on it. In my case, what I look for is some small details that are very, very common for rookie mistakes, for example. So I look for the really basic things that I could probably go over in 2 seconds, like change this, change this, change this, because blah, blah, blah. And I can answer those very, very quickly. And then once those preliminaries are done, then we can get into the heart of the matter. And I think that's the real key, because you have a confined amount of time that you can really offer useful input on. It teaches you to not ramble too much, which I may be doing right now, mind you. It teaches you just to get to the point, and not only you getting to the point, but also asking the questions that allow you to be the most useful to your students or to your clients, in my case.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for your advice and your input on this. We've had a few questions about how people can use Helpouts in their business model, so I hope it's working really well for you, and we appreciate the time that you took today. One other point we should mention is that we are very geographically far apart, but without this medium, we could have not managed to do this meeting. So Helpouts also the advantage that if an expert's not in your area, you could reach out to them abroad, and I think that that's a really important thing to talk about as well, too. But again, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this, and I'm sure our viewers really well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really liked it.